Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and I am Jon Croft. How's everybody doing? Rebecca's
Hi.
here. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Good. You look great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, I'm feeling better myself. I'm not as sick as I was last week. Um, and I also had a great interview with Ryder the Omniscient earlier this
Yeah.
week. Really incredible. I mean, what a great guy. Um, We talked about a lot of cool stuff. A lot of the stuff he already talks about, which is about how to improve Christian film, faith-based film, and critiquing the faith-based genre, and just kind of like that industry, kind of critiquing that industry. And how about you, Rebecca? How was your week so far?
It's been a good week. Yeah. It's been a good week.
Are you trying to ask me what media experiences I've had this week?
I was gonna try to get you to ask me what media experiences I've
What media experiences have you been having this week, Rebecca?
Well, a few weeks ago I got this book and
Yes, Surprised
Surprised
by
by
Joy.
Joy by C.S. Lewis, and I've been really enjoying it, reading it slowly. And I got to this part at the end that was really awesome. And I don't think it would be a normal cultural warfare episode if we didn't mention George MacDonald. So
Right,
I
that's
wanted
right.
to read this quote. He talks about buying a book, just quickly kind of grabbing a book and buying it before he gets on a train.
Yep, on
And
a train stop. Yep.
yeah, and the book happens to be Fantastes, which is um it
One of George
seems to be,
MacDonald's first fairy tales, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, one of his first. And so he's reading it, and anyways, I'll just read this quote from the book where C.S. Lewis talks about what happened to him after he read it. He says, "But now I saw the bright shadow coming out of the book into the real world and resting there, transforming all common things and yet itself unchanged. Or more accurately, I saw the common things drawn into the bright shadow. In the depth of my disgraces, in the then invincible ignorance of my intellect, all this was given me without asking, even without consent. That night, my imagination was in a certain sense baptized. The rest of me not unnaturally took longer. I had not the faintest notion what I had let myself in for in buying Fantastes." And
Hmm.
that's his quote, and that's the end of that chapter. Um, and I just thought that was he actually says a lot more about the book, but I just thought it was so beautiful. And I have to say, when I read George MacDonald, I have a similar experience where I feel something, I feel my imagination is baptized.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it sounds weird to say that, but I mean, if you're a Christian, you know what baptism is about, so it's like you're being kind of ushered into this new world in a way. And, some people have likened baptism, if you're a writer or artist, to kind of like going into a pool and coming out the pool into another world, right? Kind of like a portal.
Yeah.
And I find that that's very, a satisfying definition of it. Uh,
Yeah.
and so you're kind of coming through that portal a different person in a way, right? You've experienced something new and it's changed you in a deep way. So he's saying that in terms of his imagination.
Yeah.
I find that that's very true with McDonald. He's got this very fertile imagination, and he
Yeah.
describes things in kind of this sublime way that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it always has a great moral to it as well. So it's not just beauty for beauty's sake, right?
Yeah.
Which so many authors, that's what they're all about, is just beauty for beauty's sake. It's nice to have beauty, right? It's nice to be in that world. But when it's for also with a good moral, a good purpose, a good value to it, that's just so much more beautiful. It's beauty on another level.
Yeah.
So I find that to be the case with his work. Like take one of the authors that was another author that was inspired by him, Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, was inspired by George MacDonald, and his stuff is beautiful, but it's not with purpose and value. In fact, he even says it was meant in many ways to be purposeless. It's supposed to be just pure entertainment, and which Alice in Wonderland is. It's very entertaining, but there's no real meaning to it, and it's
Yeah.
actually meant to be without meaning. So,
Yeah.
you can learn a lot. You could do something like C.S. Lewis, right, and learn the proper lesson from McDonald, or you could be like Lewis Carroll and not get the whole point of
Yeah.
having a fertile imagination. So, likewise, us, in the modern time, we really need things that are not like Lewis Carroll, right? They're not just entertainment for entertainment's sake. And we've been experiencing that a lot from Hollywood in the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I think people are kind of like done with that. I mean, I know myself personally, I am. I'm just kind of done with the purposelessness of Hollywood and of the purposes that they do choose to champion. They just aren't, there's no value system there that's really worth championing or dying for, so your society is going to be purposeless and aimless when Hollywood is the primary place people are getting their hopes and dreams from. Instead you need people who have real values to share. Not only are you having your imagination baptized, right, but you are able to go into a world that has value and purpose to it and come out the other end with something to live for. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Surprised by Joy. I haven't read that whole book myself. I've read a lot of his other stuff, but you've been telling me about it, and I'm just so glad that it's got good stuff in there. You say there was some difficult things in Surprised by Joy? How would you describe that?
Well, he had a difficult he just had like hard stuff happen to him in his childhood. Like his mother died when he was young, and he had a really good relationship with his brother though. And they had like a fantasy world that they were always building on together.
Yeah,
Um,
what was that? Do you remember what that world was called? It was like a funny name or something.
no, I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
don't I don't remember either.
You'll have
I
to read the
remember
book.
they were like they had very light kind of humor with
Yeah.
their stuff and like little bunny rabbits and just fun
Yeah.
fun stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
the king, yeah, they had a King Rabbit. He was
Yes.
the ruler over their country, and they had all the animals that were he called them dressed animals, like Beatrix Potter, animals that wore clothes and talked and everything.
Yes, it's great.
But then he went to some really difficult schools, and this was just at a time where it was just not a good time for boarding schools
Yeah.
in England or Ireland. And so
Is there
he
ever a good time for boarding schools? I don't know.
he had some pretty bad experiences there. But then the neat thing is that later on, I think in his teenage years, he actually just had a tutor. So he was basically homeschooled,
Hmm.
and his tutor just had him translating Homer from Greek
Oh,
into
yes.
English. And he said that was the most wonderful way to learn. He said he was so happy those years.
That's so great. That does seem like a good, like something I would enjoy too if someone did that to me.
That'd be a fun way to, and you can just imagine him drinking tea all day and
Yeah.
then going for walks and then coming back to translate Homer and then going for a walk and then coming back.
Yeah. That would be incredible.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. One time I wrote a song and I translated it into Spanish, the song. And I had gone to Spanish class, so it wasn't so difficult, but that was like years earlier. And so I had forgotten a lot of Spanish. And so I just translated it into Spanish. It was just so enjoyable to do that. It took like, I don't know, a few hours.
Yeah.
And I didn't have like an easy resource like Spanish dictionary or whatever. Um, those kinds of things are really kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But
What
yeah,
about you? What
so
media have you been experiencing this week?
thank you. Thank you for asking. Let's see. Oh yeah, well, like I said before, we had this great interview with Ryder the Omniscient. That's not really a media experience so much, but it was an experience and he's a great guy. Let's see, what else did I do? I know I did something else. Let me see. I guess I guess I remember yeah, the thing happening with Brett Cooper. Brett Cooper who left the Daily Wire earlier this week. That happened, but of course, like the funny thing was I kept seeing these rumors on YouTube and other social media like Brett, I know Brett Cooper's going to leave the Daily Wire because Daily Wire is horrible and terrible. These kinds of people, they're like looking for any kind of reason to dump on the Daily Wire because they're not conservatives or whatever. And so it's obvious why you would do that, right? Because you're not conservative and you're just thinking about politics. But then they're going to use all kinds of fake nonsense reasons, and they're just going to claim that these things are true. And then you find out a few days later she is leaving the Daily Wire, but she's like, these rumors about bad stuff, it's not true. I just decided to leave. They didn't kick me out or anything. It has nothing to do with Candace Owens and other political disagreements and stuff like that. And so the way she was talking, it was kind of like a time in her life where she wanted other things, and she has the freedom to stay or go now because she's got so many fans. Like she could just leave for like 5 years or whatever and come back, and people would still watch her stuff. So she's kind of earned a level of freedom
Yeah.
that is very you know, it's going to make it very possible for her to just do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And so I think Tim Pool commented on this in a video where he was really reasonable about it and kind of dispelled a lot of the rumors just you know from a very realistic and experienced place in the podcasting world. And so I actually wrote an article on it based on that and based on a few other things. So that's on Media Moses, by the way. But so I did have that experience. And oh yeah, my friend Marcus Pittman from Lore TV also commented on this situation, and which is kind of what made it stick in my mind for today. But he was talking about how the Daily Wire is exuding kind of like what I think he calls it boomer vibes or something, to where it's like he's kind of providing a little extra kind of like perspective on why he thinks Brett Cooper might have left the Daily Wire. Like, why leave the Daily Wire when if the Daily Wire is the place to be, right? And so the idea is he's not saying the Daily Wire is terrible or whatever. He's just saying that the Daily Wire might be exuding boomer vibes. In other words, their managing, producing of her show may have kind of made it prohibitive for her to be who she is on her show. And because she comes from a different generation, right? She knows she has the freedom to just not listen to any of this and just leave. And so, the influencers, the creators, the Gen Zers out there, they might not see as much of the value in the Daily Wire, right? Because they've got a different kind of value system. And so he was just kind of commenting, I think it was on his Substack, Marcus was, on on the issue with the Daily Wire, meaning that they are, yes, they're very popular, they're conservatives, but they also tend to lean towards the boomer kind of direction. And so they're not really necessarily going to be then, as a result, getting a lot of Gen Zers on board because Gen Zers think differently. So, and that her
That's,
leaving Daily Wire is like a just another indication of that, you know.
yeah.
So I mean, it's very speculative to say a lot of that, but in some ways, it's kind of obvious, right? She's one of the only other creators that are her age there. Everybody else is probably 40 and up. Um, and which no, that's not boomer. Nevertheless, it's boomer vibe, right? It's like the point of saying that is like to say that they're not thinking the way Brett thinks. And maybe they were micromanaging a bit instead of just managing on a level that's useful and friendly, you know?
Well, the shows that I've seen, Matt Walsh and the other guy, sorry, I don't remember his name.
That's okay.
They look very produced. They look
Yes.
very controlled.
A little too refined, maybe.
Yeah, very refined. And
I even
so,
think Brett looks pretty refined for someone of her age.
yeah.
And maybe that was a result of the Daily Wire kind of coming in and doing her hair or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah, it could be that she's wanting a little more like creative control.
Yep. Yep. And also she's newly married. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's going to really change your values.
Yeah.
And not the more permanent values, but the values for right now. In fact, the most important kind of values you have, um, as it comes to timeliness, like what's going on right now. Well, you just got married, or you just had a kid, or maybe you just found out you were pregnant, right? Like that's going to change your value system immediately as a woman, I think, with
Hmm.
what's important to you, like especially in relation to your career, right?
Hmm.
So where guys, there's a little bit of like flexibility, right?
Hmm.
For a guy, if they get married or if they have a kid, they're still kind of like feel flexible about work in the sense that they still value work pretty high on the totem pole. In fact, sometimes they even value it even more when they have
Hmm.
a baby. That's quite often actually for men. When for the lady it goes down. Um, so
Yeah.
Cooper could be pregnant.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like nobody's mentioned that, but it's like kind of
That's,
an obvious thing that could be happening when you think about it.
mhm.
But that would be charming and sweet, wouldn't it? That'd be cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, we wish her the best. And
Yeah.
no matter what happens, I'm sure she's going to be fine. But and also I think they even did mention that she's still going to be in the Pendragon Cycle, and she's still going to be in the Snow White movie. So, a lot of these things tend to happen pretty early on, and then it's all in post-production and distribution. So a lot of her work is probably done now anyway. Even on the Pendragon cycle, because her character might not be necessary in the next uh, season. I don't want to give any spoilers, but
Mhm.
yeah.
So
So
did they film Snow White already?
yeah, well, I bet you they did.
Yeah.
I bet you they did. And I bet they did it either right before or right after Pendragon Cycle was done. Um, because they'd already cut a trailer. And now I know the trailer was cut pretty early on. And because they mentioned that they just like got together and shot it pretty quickly. And that this was like 6 months ago. They mentioned that 6 months to 8 months, something like that. Pendragon has been done now for maybe, I don't know, 2, 3 months. It's been finished. They're probably doing visual effects and editing. I mean, that's frankly, I think that's probably done now too. So they've probably had a good 3 months to shoot. If they haven't been shooting it during Pendragon cycle, they could have been shooting it during the Pendragon cycle as well. Like there's no reason they couldn't have been done doing that, really. So um I don't know if it's a different director though. I think it's I don't know. I don't remember who they said was directing Snow White. Jeremy Boring? I don't remember. Anyway, a lot of that's speculative, but I think that she'll be just fine. And even if she's not completed with a lot of that stuff, I think she'll stay on for those jobs. I don't see why she wouldn't. But and then, often when you have a lead actor, lead actress, and things change, you will rearrange your shooting schedule according to that actor's schedule. Like they become the most important asset to that film or that show. And obviously there's some contractual obligations there, but um, a lot of times films will just move their schedule around for the actor. So there's no reason that she wouldn't be able to fulfill that. But so yeah, that's you know um, one of the things happening this week. Our bigger subject is about Justine Bateman because she's just based. She's pretty amazing. I did an article on her maybe 2 weeks ago about her comments about the end of the woke era, which I thought was a pretty cool little quote she made. And the sentiment seems astute and timely. So I did that article. And then I find out then that she's also in the rounds talking to people in other conservative places, including Film Threat, who is a um, kind of a media company who does reviews and curation and talks Hollywood. They're in LA and they talk Hollywood stuff all the time. But they like it when people like Justine Bateman come out and say a lot of the things they've been saying for a while. And and also they get pushback from, mainstream media who don't like what they have to say. The Film Threat goes, looks like you have a similar opinion to me. And you're getting pushed back too. And this is, you become what I call foxhole friends.
Mm.
So you're in the foxhole and you're like, you know, welcome to the party, as Bruce Willis would say, right? Uh, welcome to the party, pal. So, Justine Bateman has been saying some pretty based things lately, and she did a long interview with them, about like an hour and a half interview with Film Threat. I've got some of it here. See if I
And
can.
she's been saying a lot of the things that you've been saying as well.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out because I was kind of blown away myself that some of the things she was saying was like spot on with some of the stuff I've said.
Yeah, like the new wave movement.
Yeah, the French New Wave. She mentioned that um, by word, by word for word. Now she says it in a way of like the way she says that is there's a new film movement that's going to happen, and it's going to be like the French New Wave, but it's not the French New Wave, right? So you might hear her say things like, it's going to be better than the French New Wave. It's not the French New Wave. But what she means is it's going to be like the French New Wave. It's just kind of like more, you know? And by necessity, it has to be different, right? Because of course like history doesn't work that way. No, there's no two movements that if there's a resurgence of another movement, that it's the same thing as the previous one. That's just, like even neoclassicism is neoclassicism. It's not classicism, right? So any resurgence of an old thing has to be new in some way. But let's see if I can share this. Here we
So
go.
we'll call it neo new wave.
Yes, neo French New Wave.
Speculating on what could be next, right? And
Mhm.
so, and this folds into the film festival. For me, and I know there's a lot of cognitive dissonance when I say this sort of thing for people that have been following any of my anti-AI tweets. I think generative AI is one of the worst ideas society's ever had because I was going to say circumvents, but it discredits and disrespects human effort so utterly and completely. In fact, the only way they can sell you subscriptions to some of this stuff, ChatGPT and so forth, is to convince you you can't do these basic things yourself, like write emails or look something up, do a little research. I think it's one of the worst ideas we ever had, and yet there's nothing I say will stop it. I know that, and I am not even trying to stop it. But I'm going to point to it as I'm going to point to the people that are perpetrating this because they're doing it because of greed. They're doing it because this isn't a tool that you incorporate into your business. This is a means by which you can fire people. This isn't so we can get better films out into the public. So I'm pointing at it. And yet this is a time right now, generally speaking, big picture, where structures that have been in place for too long without changing have to be broken now because the people that were in control of who were in control of the structures didn't allow the changing. So you look back at the 20th century, you look at every generation or not generation, but every decade, there was change and movement, and you had new things happening, new music, new things in culture, new things in medicine, new things in psychology. We had things shifting and changing, right? And by about 2000, since about 2004 or 5, it just stopped. It stopped. But none of that, like ebb and flow and change, no. So there's a lot of people that are invested in everything staying exactly as it is. I mean, you see it especially in politics, right? Look at the number of people that are still in office. Yeah. Look at like term limits as far as representation in the Senate and the House. Anyway, maybe they'll deal with that. So because these people weren't allowing things to change, it seems like the only recourse is to break them. Mm-hmm. So Trump, it appears, is being used to break the political structure so that new things can come through it. In entertainment, I think generative AI is being used to break the entertainment structure because it doesn't work anymore. Anyway, so I am excited, and I feel like I was born for what happens on the other side of that breaking in the film business, which is finally a new genre. Like it's been delayed for, 15, 20 years. A new genre in the arts, and something that's not a return to something great from the past, like the French New Wave moment or the birth of musicals or anything like that. Something really new. I think it's going to be really raw and really human. And Credo23 Festival, which is no AI, because nothing new is going to come through AI. New things come through humans, period, in our world. all the innovations and exciting things that have ever happened in culture, medicine, everything in the past have all come through humans. They haven't come through a machine. They're not going to come through an algorithm, especially like generative AI, which for anyone who doesn't know, it's sort of like a blender. It can't do anything unless you put something in it. So if you want to write a book, you got to put in thousands, millions of books and then give it a prompt. I want a book about pandas that cook. And provided you've put information about pandas and cooking in there, it'll spit out a little Frankenstein spoonful based on your prompt. But if you don't feed it anything, it can only regurgitate the past, which is, we've been kind of doing that by hand for the last 10 years with all the reboots and sequels and all of that. So AI is the perfect next step for those that want to just regurgitate the past. And you can do it cheaper and faster. So anyway, but the new thing is going to come through humans. And so Credo23 and, you know, other people might be doing this kind of thing too, is sort of a tunnel through which you can endure the inferno and come out the other side with your new material. So I just encourage any filmmakers, wow, you know, do not make content. I mean, if you're called to be a filmmaker, make the thing you know you're supposed to make. Like, stop kidding yourself. Yep. Don't try to make it in this business, because this particular business that we've had for 100 years is done. This structure, the things, you know, and in that particular op-ed you guys were talking about in Fast Company, I kind of lay out, I mean, you only have so much space for detail, but I kind of lay out like the structures that were necessary in order to have that type of business we had for 100 years. And those sorts of structures and supports like don't exist anymore. It's nothing. It's not
Yep.
there anymore.
Yep. Well, I had to stop it there. Man, she made so many points there, and all of them I think are 100% true. Like every one of them. Now, now I agree with her point she made. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm 100% against AI. I do think that AI is a tool that can be used to make something and to create something. And as a result, it's like, sure, that's not a tool that's incredibly creative. In fact, you could say it's not creative by definition at all, right? Um, but I do think that, you know, because it is difficult and expensive to make films, it might serve some filmmakers who don't want to, who aren't able, right, really to hire all the people, right? And maybe they can't hire like a background, like an artist to do the backgrounds, or they can't hire this or that. So, in other words, it might actually bring in a few new filmmakers that couldn't have come into the industry because it was just too expensive or too prohibitive or too difficult for them to come into the industry. And because I think I mentioned this to you earlier today, honey, when I was talking about Justine Bateman and how we would talk about her tonight. One of the things that about Credo 23, and I went to their site, I went to their site. Let's see, I think I've got it here. Here it is. I went to their site, and you study it, and it's got really great stuff that they say. They seem very well organized. You know, they have a lot of great people who are highly experienced filmmakers. Uh, they are LA filmmakers. I mean, they're not like not Hollywood filmmakers. They are Hollywood filmmakers who don't want to who want to work, right? They want to have work, they want to have jobs, but one of the extra things in order to get the Credo 23 seal on your film, which certifies that your film is not AI, is that you have to be a union picture. And so I was when I read that, I was like, why? Why do you have to be a union picture? You know, like what does that have to do with AI? So that kind of bothered me a little bit. if you're in LA and if you make films in Hollywood, that's like not a huge deal because all your pictures are union pictures anyway. Like 95% of them are union pictures. And so they're used to that whole economy of having to make pictures that are union run and having to follow all the rules, the union rules. But if you come out here to Florida or you go to some other state, that's not a given. And you don't always have the extra money to give to a union or to share the control of your film with this other third party. And unions are not seen as just like another great thing to make your film better. No, they often are getting in the way of you making your film better. So not just financially, but like with as it comes to the control of your film. And so this is not a positive development for me. But I think that almost everything this girl has said, I mean, I'm like, dude, like you get it. Well, obviously, she's worked in Hollywood her whole life, so she knows how Hollywood works. A lot of people do not know how Hollywood works. There's some other things she said that, plenty of other things in the video she said that indicates that she knows how Hollywood works. And I've been telling people as well. A lot of people just have no idea. Like, for example, why they are stuck on the blockbuster model as it comes to theatrical, instead of like what what they used to do 20 years ago or 30 years ago, where they'd have the $20 million pictures or even just like the $10 million pictures, and those would make their money back and maybe an extra 10, 50 million on top of that. And like what's wrong with that model? Why can't we make those films? And so Hollywood ended up making the big blockbuster films, which are about a built-in audience, and then also like a few you know awards season pictures and other genre pictures, that are cheap. And all these other films are like super cheap to make, and so they'll make like 20 super cheap films a year, and then they'll make like two blockbusters, three blockbusters a year. And those and where they put the lion's share of that money, blockbusters. Like we're talking 80, 90% of all their cash goes into blockbusters. And why is that? And she says it well, just like I've said it, is when you do hit with a blockbuster, and plenty of studies have been done on this, when you do hit with the blockbuster, you just make so much more money than you can hit on one of these smaller films. So it's all about big gambles and big successes, you know, and that's just kind of how it works. So a lot of people complain about this, but they don't understand that a blockbuster film will make $1 billion. And compared to like the 50 million that a small picture could make as a success, that's a serious success for a small picture to make 50 million. That's just as unheard of as the blockbuster making $1 billion. So it's like you take your pick. Do you want to make $1 billion or do you want to make a few million here and there? Right? Every film you make is a risk. So it's like people just don't understand like the reason they've been doing it is because actually those films actually do make some serious cash. But then obviously you become subservient to that model, and it's all about the built-in audience. And then there's other agenda points that go in there, you're ticking boxes. But she has made a big deal about this AI situation. And you know what? I actually agree with her sentiment. I believe that filmmaking is an art form, and I don't think anything new is going to come from AI. I really don't. But you know, that doesn't mean you can't make something new with some AI in your film. So you can still get new ideas and then have AI like in the background or something, right? So, you know, but I get her point, and I like the purity of her thinking. Like I like the idea that, because she's smart enough to understand that these things represent industries, right?
Hmm.
These things really do represent like a growing influence, right, of something in our culture, which does reduce jobs. It does reduce human creativity. Like she's talking about how like why am I going to use an AI when I can just look it up myself? Like it's making your mind weak when you're
Yeah.
always trusting, like you're always leaning on some crutches, you know? Remember when people used to talk about how if you're a Christian, you use God as a crutch. And now everybody's got AI in their pocket and they're using AI as a crutch,
Mm.
and we all get to laugh at them now. But
Oh.
you know, she's got a good point,
Mhm.
you know? And I really feel like, is it really that hard to make a film without AI? Really? Is it really that hard? Like, what if,
Yeah.
okay, so you don't have your backgrounds. Aren't you really just like playing with this technology to make it easy for you? Like, is it really that hard to go somewhere and shoot something? I like, I don't know. I think it's actually, like forcing yourself to do the extra work to do that, like every filmmaker the last 100 years has done. I kind of side with Justine on this one.
Yeah.
Like, if I had a choice, I'd rather prove myself as an artist to myself, even not even to others, to myself, and say, where am I going to get this location? Where am I going to get, these actors? Where am I going to get this and that? There's a beauty to that that's just unmistakable. It's like AI, and I'm going to play a little bit more of her video because she makes some other great points here. Let's see.
Yeah. AI it can only be derivative. It can only do what we we tell it to do, what we let it do. Um, so you're
Right.
not really going to get anything original there, but art isn't always original. Art isn't always brand new. Um,
It's
but
true.
I but
That's a good point. Yeah.
But I agree with her. I'm a fan of humanity, and I think it's awesome when you can look something up on your own and write an email on your own.
I know,
That's a
right?
skill you want to have.
It's kind of common sense when you think about it, which
It's a
by the
skill
way,
it's a skill you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose your
yes.
ability to write emails
Right.
or to write scripts or poetry or even create art, like you don't want to lose that ability because you've become so dependent on something for it, something else that provides it for you. But that being said, it's just a tool. Like you can use it as a tool.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
go on.
I'm gonna play some more of her video. Let's see.
At that budget, you then can't hire an up and coming filmmaker to make
Oh,
that
fun. I
movie.
mean, you just hit the nail on the head on like one of the problems with the film business and reason it's collapsed. And no, and not even just new stars. What about new filmmakers?
Mhm.
What about where's this next batch? Where's the P.T. Anderson, Steven Soderbergh, Wes Anderson, Quentin Tarantino? Where's that back? Where's that new? You know what I mean?
And
Where's that?
what she's talking about is the fact that because Hollywood has changed its structure, right? Because it's focused on these three things, blockbusters, streaming content, and AI, the future of Hollywood, which is to replace a lot of people with these machines. Um, Hollywood is not focused on finding the new filmmakers and finding new talent because they don't need that stuff. They go into a conversation about how um, agents are getting actors to give their likeness, their digital likeness, to the studios just for some piddly cash, and then they can use their likeness in perpetuity, and then they don't have to hire them anymore. And studios would argue that the reason that this they need to do this is because well, what if the actor's not available? And and so it's a time thing, right? It's a financial cost to them to have to wait for an actor to be available or ready or what have you. And when they can just plug this algorithm into an AI and pop out like a performance,
Hmm.
the exact performance they want.
Hmm.
And so she's laying out, she's really creating a picture because like to learn more about her career, by the way, she went back to college in her 40s and got her degree in computer science uh when she was like between 46 and 50, I think. So she's about my age, but like so she learned all this stuff about computer technology and about digital stuff. And so like and now she's applying it. She wrote
Yeah.
2 books. She did a lot of she's made like 3 or 4 films now, just in the last few years.
Mm.
And she's seen that AI is a real concern to like the creative brain drain that's going to be happening in Hollywood because people are going to be leaving because they're not being hired anymore. They don't need all these people anymore because Hollywood's been like making a bunch of terrible films and losing a bunch of money. That's going to mean that they're going to start using things like AI instead of people because people are expensive, right? So anyway, I'll play a little bit more.
Collection. And I think it's going to come through, in this new area. And yeah, and it's going to be really new in different films. I mean, nobody wants to see, this is a problem with new filmmakers now. Like I'm sometimes a judge on some of these, or on the jury of something where we're looking at new films, new filmmakers. And I'm like, God damn it, you're trying to do it right. This is an audition to do content. And I don't blame them really, because like you look at what succeeds in what's left of the business.
By the way, I want to kind of translate what she's saying there. She's saying that these directors are ticking boxes in order to get a job at a streamer and do what's called content. Content is just like commercial work someone hires you to do so you can get a job. It's not art. That's the point. That's why people use that term now, especially the streamers. The streamers, what they will do is they'll do everything by the numbers and say, okay, filmmakers, we're looking for this kind of script that has this kind of actor and this kind of plot and this kind of this and this kind of that. This is what we're looking for now. And then a writer will literally write that script and a director will direct it. So it's done in a reverse way. And I've experienced this myself where I was trying to make content as well. And I didn't realize I was doing it at first until later. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm totally watering down my own creativity here. And so she's just reporting on this same phenomenon that you experience when you're in Hollywood, which is they want you to do everything in reverse for the marketplace. And so then what happens is this new term content happens and everybody's just making content. You're feeding this machine what it wants, right? And you're really not engaging in creativity at that point, right? So that's what she's saying. She sees these directors like jumping through hoops for people. Like, I'll give you whatever you want. That's not artist. That's not art, you know?
And it is, like you guys just said, like, align yourself to the algorithm and make
Yeah.
these that.
So you're
And
saying they're playing it safe. They're playing it safe.
They're saying, look, I can do content. Will you hire me? And I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll be taken care of. You'll be taken care of financially. You got to trust that if you're called to this, and maybe you're not, maybe you're just trying to make it as a filmmaker. You're not actually gifted at it. But if you're called to it, and if you are, because you can't do anything else, you're your whole life won't go in any other direction. Then do the film you know you're supposed to do. You will be taken care of financially. You have to trust that. But you've got to go in the new direction. If you're called to that, you got to go there, or you're going to have a miserable life. You're going to like be fighting against that, and that rubber band is going to keep pulling you back and pulling you back. So just stop fighting it and make the film you know you're supposed to make.
I love her confidence.
Her confidence, yeah, it's inspiring. Like you don't see a lot of people just saying it like it is all the time. She's like the wise aunt, you
She's
know.
she's like, you will be provided for. Yeah.
Yeah, like have some faith.
Okay. Amen.
She's obviously a creative person, probably because she's felt the same way, right? She left the
Yeah.
industry, she went to college, and then she came back to the industry, right? Probably for the same reason. She's
Yeah.
like, that rubber band brought me back. I'm a creative person. Like I can't help it. And why would I help it anyway? Like, there's nothing wrong with being an artist and having your own creative idea. In fact, people need that more and more, so stop listening to all the not only the naysayers, but then the people who want to put you in the monkey grinder and be like, no, just be our new AI, like do whatever we say, tick the boxes, you know, and you'll get hired by Netflix or whatever. Like, well, there's other ways you can be hired. You don't have to do what the machine says, you know. You don't have to be a mindless drone like other people. Um, talking about filmmakers also here.
I don't know how much you know about Film Thread, but it's been around for
I know.
40 years. I started when I was a kid covering indie film. I feel like we're on the cusp of, through your festival and you speaking out and just looking at movies like Terrifier 3, whatever you think of that movie, I don't think they used AI. Pretty sure it was all practical effects. I feel we're on the cusp of an indie film revolution that could be maybe only comparable to the early 70s of American cinema. Is this what you're feeling?
Yes, but something new. Like,
Right.
even though it would be great to return to that, I think it's something that's even new, even more new, newer, something different. And I think it's going to have a lot to do with, look, if the audience is going to respond to AI, especially where they get to put themselves in, like, oh, tonight I want to watch, Star Wars and put my face on Princess Leia's body, like that, right? Face replacement, being able to, for an upcharge, be able to put themselves in some of these customized, your panda cooking show, be able to put yourself in it. So I think people are going to be enamored with this at first, and then they'll start to feel sick about it. And they'll also not like the way AI is infiltrating the rest of their lives, like denying them coverage. I was talking about this over a year ago, denying coverage through an AI algorithm at insurance companies, which we've heard a lot of recently. And also maybe they get fired. Maybe their children are getting wrong ideas because, and I think this is child abuse, they brought AI into school systems, generative AI, because there's a difference. But then, so I think they'll get to a point where they'll go, and I don't want to, for my entertainment, I don't want to be tricked anymore. I want to know, is this a person I'm looking at or not? And I think they'll start to reject AI. This is after they've been enamored with it. They'll start to reject it, and then they'll start to reject not only things that are knowingly made with, or they know are made with generative AI, but things that even look like they're made with generative AI. And they'll want something really real and really raw and really human, something that's very obviously made by humans. And I think that'll include story structure that's really different. I think we're going to see more avant-garde kind of projects. I think people are really going to respond to that. And at the same time, you'll have filmmakers that are going to have to differentiate themselves from that which generative AI can do faster and cheaper. So they'll have to do work that AI can't do, that generative AI can't generate. They'll have to do something that's really unique. So then you have these two things meeting together at the end of this, on the other side of this inferno. And then also something special, I think, God or the universe or magic or whatever you want to call it is going to pull into it. And that's where it's going to be something really new. So similar kind of direction is what you mentioned, the French New Wave or the 70s in America and filmmaking, but something different, something new on top of that.
Wow, did you hear it or what? Like I think she's right about she's predicting what's going to happen. And she knows the facts, right? She knows that creativity comes from human beings, doesn't come from AI. She knows people are going to get a little bit enamored by it. And then what's going to happen? It's going to be a backlash. And so she knows that because creativity comes through people, the people who have been using that skill in the last 10 years or so, and they're not using AI, are the people who are going to get the lion's share of that attention because they know how to do it well. They've been ignoring AI, right? And so all their stuff, when people want to go non-AI, what are they going to do? They're going to go to those people who've already been championing it, already been saying no to it. And so all their stuff's going to be proven to be non-AI. It's going to have maybe her Credo23 insignia on it or whatever. And they're gonna be going to those films. I mean, not only just that, but just the beauty of making films without all that extra junk in it. Because these guys are like invoking these other older film movements like the French New Wave, like the 70s American independent film movement. And these were beautiful expressions of powerful art and personal art. And so like I've said the same thing. I believe and well also the French New Wave specifically, if you look at how they did it, you'll kind of agree with it more. It's not just about the films and the intimacy of the films. That is a part of it, but it's also about how they did it, the behind the scenes of how they did it. And so like when you compare that era to the era now, there's more connections you can make, right? It was literally a groundswell movement, and it was happening through, I think she even talks about this, um, where it happened through film societies. Um, and critics became filmmakers, Jean-Luc Godard and people like him. There's
I
a
don't, I don't
question.
think you can say, I think it's in tatters. I don't think you save it. I mean, I think part of it is because they redirected so much money into setting up. I mean, God, for a while there, we were seeing every week, every month, like reports of how much money they were losing by setting up these streaming models. And maybe some of it is working for them, but again, one of the parts of of the Hollywood system, you had a little bit of scarcity. You had a little bit of, this is only available now. This is only available in theaters for, it used to be
Release
like
windows.
6 months or something, but
yeah.
And then you got into like, it's available in theaters for 2 weeks, and then we're going to put it online. And you're like, all right, so you've trained people to not go to the movies.
Exactly.
They're saying, oh, people don't want to go to the theaters anymore. You did that. The CEOs trained them not to go because you're like, oh, by the time you really hear about the film, because marketing is so difficult now because everything's so fractured. People are like, oh, by the time you hear about it, it's either online already or it'll be online in a day. So I think rather, to answer Matthew's follow-up, I think rather we've got to recreate. And I think one of the ways we're going to recreate a sort of system is a little akin to the French New Wave movement in the 60s. And that is, they had all these film societies, right? And the critics within those film societies became some of our big filmmakers like Godot and Truffaut and Alan Resnais and people like that. So what I'm going to do over on Substack now is, for all my subscribers, I'm going to have films on there that are, so my films, I mean, if you have a lot of investors, it's kind of tough to get around getting an MG and really doing proper distribution. But I'm going to have the films, the two avant-garde films that I have that are going to be in the Credo23 Film Festival. I had no plans to put them online. I was just going to wait and see when I could have them in theaters and only show them like that, because I don't want to throw them online because it's like throwing it into like a giant Costco bin. I also feel like, anyway, this is a little bit of a tangent, but part of art, whether it's paintings or books or films or whatever it is the context. How are you presenting it? How are you treating it? And to just throw films online, you're not that's one of the things the streamers did. That's why they call it content. It's just stuff to them.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm going to be putting my films on my Substack and create like a little film society there. And like maybe it'll be available just for a week, one particular month. And then maybe I'll take another filmmaker and I'll say, hey, do you want to put your film on? We'll work out some sort of payment thing, based on subscribers that come in because they want to see your film. Do something like that. Because all the models that we have for distribution and stuff, they work if you're actually making money on this stuff. But the distribution models don't work now. The piece that the streamers take, it's too much relative to the amount of money you need to make back. The distribution deals you have with distributors, their marketing fees, their sales fees, their distribution percentage, and then what you have to pay them back plus interest. That can work if you have your $1 million film in the theater and then it makes $6 million. But it can't work if you've got like a $250,000 MG, you got a $250,000 MG, and you've got to pay that back or they've got to collect that back with interest before you get, I don't know, not to go into that. That's much more detail than I'm sure you have time for. But I think we need to get into like sort of a new route. And like the Credo23 Film Festival, it's going to be one location at the American Legion Theater, Post 43 on Highland Boulevard, just down from the Hollywood Bowl, which is this awesome Spanish style building with this 460 seat theater that's stunning. And we're just going to be there for 2.5 days. Just like talking.
She's going to talk about the festival a little bit, but also, this is really cool. Like she talks about how she wants her festival to actually pay the filmmakers who bring their film there. So in other words, a form of distribution that's successful. And so they talk about distribution a little bit and how it's failed, but also they talk about how like festivals are supposed to be kind of a form of distribution in the sense that people are seeing your film and then you're getting some press to look at your stuff and talk about it. But then also you're hoping to get distribution from your festival. And that's been happening less and less and less at festivals. And so it's less of a payoff for a filmmaker who needs to take risks. They need to fly out to the festival. They need to buy a DCP. They need to like buy all these P&A budget stuff, like your posters and all this promotional junk. And then you've got to show up and be ready for interviews, right? And then you might get nothing out of it. You might have spent $15,000 and then you get zero. And then they give you bad press. And I'm just like, why would you even do that? So what she's talking about is like, what if you got accepted to the festival, you get paid? Like you just get paid.
Yeah.
And so like whether that means distribution for them or what or not, like above and beyond the festival is another question. But like it's kind of like saying if you get accepted, you've already won the award. And
Yeah.
by winning the award, you're winning like your budget getting paid a little bit, paid off. Who knows about paying all of it off? Who knows how much money it is? But it's like it could at least pay off all your expenses to go there and take all your risk is far reduced.
Yeah. I love that idea because yeah, film festivals are expensive to attend and expensive to enter.
Hmm.
And then it's true, if you get accepted, then you still have to pay your way to get there
Yeah.
to watch other people watch your film. and you kind of paid for that whole experience. So I like what she's saying. I think that would be much more beneficial for filmmakers, much
Yeah,
more
it's gonna
encouraging for filmmakers.
at least it will pay off to some degree, right? And then like the hopes of what they used to sell in the 90s, that they would sell this, blow smoke at you. Apparently it was blowing smoke, but at the time, right, the reason it worked was because some people did get distribution deals.
Yeah.
And people did get almost like instant fame, right? Because their film did well and some press, like really did your film up and made you look good. And I mean, this was like in the 90s and the early 2000s, but like since then, it's not been nearly like they talk about this as well in the interview. So, if you like what she's saying here, watch the whole interview. She's got tons of like great information here. She even gives answers a lot of questions from people. She's incredibly like graceful to all these people who are asking her tons of questions. She even has a little story about how she got cut on one of her sets. And had to go to the hospital. But she's got a ton of information to offer people. I really recommend if you're interested in like trying to make films into the future and you want to navigate the future as it comes to like where's Hollywood going, consider like following some of her advice. So watch the whole interview, follow some of her advice, and it could be headed in the correct direction because after what happened with Hollywood, the Hollywood strikes, after what's been happening with all the blockbuster failures and the way Hollywood is running its business, um, she could be correct about AI and about the fact that in order to keep this industry going forward, you got to dig in more to your art form as opposed to like relying on cheap and easy, you know? And another form of doing that is to continually make your stuff into content instead of doing what she's suggesting, which is to dig into your talent, into the talent that you feel like God has given you to make that crazy film that you think, is in your skin, right? And it's gonna come out. But if you keep listening to the marketing and you keep listening to people who want content and you keep ticking the boxes of what's acceptable, you're not gonna make good art. Like you're ignoring your calling. And she even says, don't even go to Hollywood. Like, why even go to Hollywood? They don't do in person anymore. This is what another thing I've been saying. They don't do in person anymore since 2020. So you don't even need to go to Hollywood. She says she's in Hollywood and she'll have meetings with people on Zoom and they won't even leave the house. So it's like, why do you even need to go to? She's like, I don't even need to be here. Like the community's here and and they're doing their festival there. So there's a lot of things still that's there, but that doesn't mean you need to write your script or shoot your film in Hollywood. You don't need to do that at all. So like she's got a lot of great advice. And I mean, who knows? This Credo 23 movement could end up making a new conservative film movement, the one similar to the one I've been describing. Of course, I kind of compare mine more to like the French New Wave, and I think it has more to do with the art form and the efficiency of it as opposed to the AI elements. But definitely not the union elements of what Credo is about. We would probably resist unions, as my guess. Um, but I could see even resisting AI at some point, being like, why do that? Like why muddy the waters with your creativity with some blender created, nonsense that somebody else actually put online, and now you're stealing their work. You're participating in this community of just like stealing other people's work. Like that's just, I don't know. Why not just be part of a new creative movement, you know? And one of the things she was describing too is the fact that when people get off of this AI kick, they're going to want new kinds of stories, not just human certified stories, but stuff like the stuff AI cannot create, which is derivative of the past, right? So that means you're going to have to almost intentionally move away from the kind of stories we've been creating for the last 100 years in film. Like almost intentionally, you're going to have to be like, we're going to do this new thing. And even though everybody says it's crazy and weird, this is just what we're going to do. It speaks to us creatively. So, I'd say lean into that, you know. But yeah, this is the kind of movement, the reason this is our topic is because this is the kind of movement I've been talking about. Justine Bateman is the kind of person to pull this off. I
Yeah.
mean, she's got the right idea. She's making waves. And this is just a testament to what one person can do if they know what they're talking about and they know what they're doing. So one person like her, yes, she's been a heavyweight in Hollywood. She knows what she's talking about. She's not like the biggest star in Hollywood, right? I mean, she was known in the 80s, barely in the 90s. The thing is, she's smart. She's been there. She has a lot of these correct answers, and she's seeing the dangers right now happening in Hollywood. And she's kind of like, as Chris Gore says, a lot of these are just common sense things. Like, why is common sense so rare in Hollywood today? You know?
Mm.
And she laughs it off. But it's like, that was a great interview. I mean, it's got great stuff in it, and I recommend listening to people like her in Hollywood, if anybody. So, yeah, that kind of blew me away this week. I was like, oh wow, I got to share this. It's just so good.
Yeah. And she's really well spoken.
Yeah, she drops a few F-bombs, but
Mhm.
it goes with the territory. It goes with her attitude, her general attitude of like, you know, don't care what people think of me. Like this is just the truth. And
Didn't
so
you
I
say
respect
that
that.
there was something she said about the woke era?
Yes, that was the article
Yeah.
that is on Media Moses. She said because Trump was elected, she senses that it's the end of the woke era. And the reason is it's not just because of Trump and politics, right? It's because people are starting to see the end of the idea that they can just cancel people for their politics. And so when that something like something like a movement like cancellation requires a momentum so that people will buy into this idea and cancel other people. But if there's no momentum, in other words, you've been hidden, like the air has been knocked out of your lungs because you just got a punch, right? And the momentum is taken out, and you're just like, oh, like now you have to think about what you're doing here. And so not everybody's buying into this idea of canceling others now, and people are getting pushback. And so it's easy to be a bully in the bully yard when you're the biggest guy in the room. But if you realize, oh wait, there's someone bigger who just came into the playground, I guess I gotta act right now. I gotta like stop being a bully.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe people aren't gonna listen to me anymore because I've bullied too many people, right? So she just is sensing the change in the room and saying it's a good thing because I think we're all tired of that nonsense.
Yeah.
And so it's a light at the end of the tunnel, like it's hope. I mean, it could have been something else besides Trump, but Trump was I think a big enough change to kind of wake people up to
Hmm.
be like, oh, like I didn't think this would happen, but looks like the country is different than I thought.
Yeah.
A little more right wing than I thought. And I think a lot of people on the left tend to be like, oh, well, we have the correct opinions and the evidence is, more people agree with us or whatever. And
Yeah.
and so now it's like, oh, well, they don't have that to, to give as a reason for why they feel justified for pushing other people around. So now it's like they have to do a reevaluation of what they were doing in the last few years, why they were doing that, why they were canceling people, you know. It's good. I mean, there's some psychoevaluation there to be had for sure. And maybe even some criminal stuff. So maybe people need to be put in prison before they start realizing, oh, that's like you can't just treat people that way, you know?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be in a free country. That means you're supposed to be able to have the right to say stuff online and not be punished for it. If it doesn't mean that, what does it mean? Like what's the First Amendment for? You can't yeah, now I have to be careful everywhere I go. Like that's not a First Amendment,
Yeah.
you know? So I think people are starting to wake up to this. It just didn't make sense for that to be happening in our country.
Yeah.
And and people have to do a little bit of soul searching, you know, what they've been
Yeah.
doing. So I agree, I agree with that for sure. I mean, I certainly think that there's still going to be people canceling people, but at least that there's hope, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, this is the Justine Bateman episode. She's pretty cool. Now it's like I want to see one of her newer films. Uh,
Yeah.
I've only watched like maybe two of her short movies before, from this research I was doing today and yesterday. But like, and she's a good film. I saw the film. It's called a short film called Z. It's like an action movie, which it's like, okay, she made an action movie. I'm not going to expect too much. It was good. I was like, wow.
Nice.
Yeah. So she's a serious filmmaker. I respect that. And she's obviously her opinions are like she knows what she's talking about, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that she's on Substack.
yeah, I like that too. I might even sign up for her little film club thing she's got going on.
Yeah, that's a neat idea.
Because you know me, that's one of the things I like too. What I love is to watch a movie with people and then talk about it right after. I just think
Hmm.
that's so like fun. Like
Yeah.
especially if people actually think about the movie and they really think about their opinions. It's
Yeah.
really like insightful. But yeah, that's our little talk tonight. I hope you got something out of it and you get to like get a little slice of what's going on in Hollywood and maybe how we can respond to it, give a good response. And I mean, we are down for some of these changes. We really hope that there's some pushback against what Hollywood's been doing, like I said, more substantial pushback. And Justine Bateman is just another one of only a few examples, but these examples are growing of pushback against Hollywood. So we're thankful for that. All right, guys. So Rebecca was saying, should we do our where you can find us again? Where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me on Substack
Yes.
and on YouTube and Facebook. Just Rebecca Croft or Rebecca Loves Jesus.
Yep.
And you'll find me on there. Where can people tell us a little bit about Media Moses and tell us where people can find you?
Yeah, MediaMoses.com is my little media platform where we talk about conservative and Christian film and media and entertainment. And we don't talk about Hollywood. We don't need those people. I know. But yeah, and you can find me on Substack as well. Well, mostly YouTube um, and X. So on YouTube, I'm Culture Warfare with Jon Croft, and on X, I am at The Media Moses or at Jon Croft. So, yeah.
Nice.
So, all right, guys. Good to talk to you. And stand up for the culture. All right. Have a good week. And we'll talk to you next week.